Okay, so let's start with you telling the camera, or telling me, I guess, your name again so we have it archived.
All right, I'm Margaret Cox, C-O-X.
And then let's start with how long you've been a part of Herland. About that.
I got involved with Herland, I think in 1983, which was right about at the beginning. We were still over on 19th Street then, 19th and Blackwelder, in the front of a little house that the owner lived in the back of.
Can you speak of how and when the group was founded?
It began, a little bit of the prehistory, had a group called LaSalle de Femme, the women's reading group, book club, and they started gathering books, and then they had too many books, I think, to put them. And then a very wonderful woman named Barbara Cleveland, who I know everyone else has talked about too, I think she's the one who, she and a few friends, found this place that used to be, it had been a small corner grocery store over in the Blackwelder area. And this old woman lived in the back, and we were allowed to use the front for the bookstore. And so it began as a bookstore. And it was open on Saturdays for about 6 hours, I think, like from 10 to 4, and on Sundays from 1 to 5. And it also would be open to do a newsletter, or put a newsletter together, and to, I think we rented out the space, only that may have been in the new building, I'm not sure which building. We rented out the space to a local counselor, psychologist counselor, and one night a week she'd meet people there.
Can you talk about the therapy sessions at home?
Well, I can't talk about hers because I didn't participate, but we did have, among other things we had consciousness raising sessions, CR. We'd get in there and we'd raise our consciences, and we'd realize some of the things that we just took for granted. Just like sort of today, people have been going along, getting harassed, and we're seeing the actresses who were so badly sexualized by people in Hollywood. Well, I really, until the Me Too started and it came out, I don't think it was, they really didn't know. You can't heal a wound if you don't know you have a wound. So that's what the CR was about.
Some examples of some topics that you would discuss during the CR session?
Changing our name when we got married, for those of us who got married. Not being able to get credit in our own name. Having to put your husband's name down. A lot of us were married or had been married. Having to put your husband's name down as the responsible party, even if you were the one with the job, you know, when you went to the doctor. And then, well, husbands, I don't know how. Well, CR really was most important, I think, for married women, because independent women kind of were getting it together on their own. But another, you know, thanking the father for babysitting his own children, and of course, I think that still goes on today. Still do that, yeah, yeah. But all of the 1,001 cuts of patriarchy and a male-centered business. And if I should have been thinking about this on the way up more, because I can't. Okay.
Speaking of battling the patriarchy, can you speak a little bit about how Herland was a woman-only space?
Yeah, excuse me. Okay. Herland itself, the building, was not a woman-only space. Some men, especially the wonderful Paul Thompson and Terry Gatewood, spent a good deal of time there. in meetings and things. They didn't work the store or anything. The retreats were women only. And this is because a lot of women, well, to this day also, but especially maybe back in the 80s, had been injured by men. And yeah, it's just the same today, actually. But having women-only space gave them a chance out at Romano's at the park or something to completely relax and not have to worry about any triggering. We didn't have that word then, but that's what one thing we were staying safe from was being triggered. And so just those 2 times a year we had the female-only retreats, and over time we adopted a policy where boy children up to the age of 10 could come. But then, no matter how darling they were and as much as we loved them, you have to cut off somewhere, so we did.
Do you want to share any of your fondest memories from the retreats?
Well, I played a lot of cards there. We drank a fair amount of Jack Daniels there occasionally. We had some wonderful entertainment. Oh my gosh. I've got to tell you, I'm having a problem these days with names, and I'm trying not to get scared by it. Nancy Scott was the name I was trying to think of. She was a wonderful woman, and she drank Jack Daniels. And of course, Peggy Johnson, who was a Herlander, and Mary Reynolds and Lee Goldberg were often there. I was not a great outdoor person, but I enjoyed it. But I didn't go on long hikes or anything. I did over in, it's called Western Hills, but it's actually in eastern Oklahoma, over near Muskogee. If you hike around there, you can find sea foxes from way far, even older than I am, back in the day when Oklahoma was covered by an ocean. And I went hiking over there looking for fossils and found some, a friend of mine and I. And we all of a sudden looked down and we were just covered with this, looked like black dust. They were tiny ticks. We hope we don't have lime. They said Oklahoma didn't have lime at the time, but I ended up with not the great big lime target that everybody recognizes, I guess, but lots of little tiny ones. Anyway, it took about 45 minutes of our friends picking ticks off of us when we got back to camp. But we found some nice fossils. That's kind of a fond memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of is.
What do you think the importance of the retreats was, or the significance of doing the retreats?
People had a wonderful time, for one thing. It did allow us to give business to our musician friends. We had a lot of workshops there at the retreats. Offhand, the only one I can think of is the safe sex one, which was attended by all. But we also had others that weren't so, where 10 or 12 people would go. And I can't think of any. I'm so sorry. Not good on details.
One of the questions I wanted to go back to, though, was if you could tell me about the details of the structure of Herland again.
The sister rotation, yeah. Right. We tried to be non-hierarchical, and we tried to do everything by consensus, which is possible, but very, very, very hard. And it's really hard to do without bullying some people into going along. But for the most part, we did a good job. And one of the things we did, instead of having a president or even a chair, secretary, well, we did have secretary, treasurer, but they were called sisters. And we had a rotation. Ideally, everyone went through the entire rotation at least once. And by the end of the rotation, which was a year and a half or 2, depending on when we did it, you should know almost everything about Herland. And so we started off with 3, which roughly were, Sister 3 was secretary, Sister 2 was treasurer, and Sister 1 was chair. She did chair the meetings and get the agenda together, but otherwise she had no more power than anybody else. And we changed it to 4, and we put in an assistant for the treasurer because that was the big job. So we had Sister 4 was the assistant treasurer, Sister 3 treasurer, Sister 2 secretary, Sister 1 chair. And by the time you rotated through a full 2 years, you knew all the finances, and you know who in the community gave, and who didn't. And you knew who came to meetings, because you were at all of them as secretary, and you knew the whole thing.
I don't even remember a few years ago, I came to the Herland house and we created these questions.
Mm-hmm.
And you were there too, and you helped us write some of these questions. So thank you for that. And one of the things that we've been trying to interview about and get information about, and I think you were one of the ones that talked to us about this question, was the relationship between talking about monogamy and open relationships and sexuality within the group, and what was that like?
Well, talking about it, this was in the days just after the AIDS, it was in the full flush of the AIDS epidemic. But up until the AIDS epidemic, there was, and tell me if this is not what you're talking about, but there was a real sense among the sort of intellectual aspects of the LGBTQ community that really monogamy didn't work that well. And that it wasn't that important, and that a kind of serial monogamy was something that could be embraced and would probably work better. And as far as that goes, why monogamy? Why not? Why make this thing about sex that maybe it wasn't, and it was just more like it's a good, fun way to connect with people? So this was a building idea, and it went hand in hand with the idea in the women's community that we don't want to get married. Marriage hurts women. And that's why you will see, even though now they can, you will see a lot of older lesbians who are not getting married. They don't want to be held together by a piece of paper. And they certainly don't want to fall into the dominant subjective aspect that marriage can give.
Specifically, what would you say is more than serial monogamy was the common practice?
Well, there was a naivete also in that whenever we had a couple, we thought, well, they're just going to be together forever. And so it did actually happen that sometimes we think this couple was going to be together forever, and then one of them would decide, no, I don't think so. And some people would get really mad at that for breaking the couple up. But everybody always gets over it. And so the hurt person in the relationship got over it, and the people who were mad at the person who left would get over it. Yeah, well, there were not that many couples who both came to the meetings, or both were on the board. They would always come to the concerts and the workshops and stuff. But
And kind of spiking from that, so what was your role then in HIV/AIDS activism in the 1980s concerning that?
my personal one,
Yes.
not very much. Not very much. There was sort of a lesbian separatist attitude at Herland. And I kind of fell into that camp, and I just didn't go very many men. And suited me at the time. And then we got involved with this something called Simply Equal, which came together, men and women of the community came together to fight something going on with the Oklahoma legislature that was a lot like the Colorado Amendment 2, which was very anti-gay. And Simply Equal came together, and I started to know some of the gay guys, and of course I loved them. And then, and then I got to know a lot more. So, but at the time, there was this kind of, we were a bit separate. We were.
And how do you feel about that now, reflecting back all these years later? Do you think that that's necessary? Because there's a lot of people that we've talked to or literature that says that in this time, in this space, it's something that was necessary. So how do you feel about it now?
I think it had its place. And I mean, it's not as if belonging to Herland was something people had to do. And it's not as if you even got great status out of belonging to Herland. It was a place where women who wanted to be separate could be. And I think it was fine. And I know that, a lot of people don't feel that way anymore. But we were a group of women and doing what we were doing, and you didn't have to give us money, and you didn't have to come, and you didn't have to do any of that. I think it's fine. I think it'd be fine today if it happened. I think whenever the more oppressed of a group wants to be off separate.
No, you're okay.
Yeah.
I feel like we haven't asked this one with the ratio, so I wanted to just touch on it again in case we need more footage. I've lost the question on this list, but it's on here. About the role of transgender women in here.
Oh yeah, I was kind of thought we'd get there.
Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Yes, well, I can. And Herland as a group primarily was quite resistant to the idea of transgendered women coming to retreats. The only male, anyone could come to the building and come to workshops and music, anything we put on. But the retreats were women only, and Herland, with one or two exceptions, who probably got bullied during the consensus process, we felt that this was early days, remember. We felt that transgendered women had been brought up male and brought up with male privilege, and we didn't think they should be allowed to come. There was at the time in the community only one really out and about transgendered woman. So it was not terribly, well, it was for her, of course. Otherwise, it was not terribly urgent that we make any other decisions. As time went on, the attitude changed. And there was realization that a transgender woman probably didn't enjoy male privilege if they had it. And so I know it's changed. It's been changed for quite some time. I am not still on the Herland board, but I got off some years ago. I'm still a supporter. Still love Herland.
I wonder if you know anything about Herland's role in the women's prison outreach at all?
Not really. I think we tried to send books to, or for a time possibly, we sent books over to Mabel Bassett, and we would occasionally, I think, if we felt ourselves flush, maybe send a subscription to Ms. to the prison. But I don't think we had much at all. Yeah.
How about Fox v. Fox? Were you involved in?
I was involved
Okay.
in that. That's the best thing that Herland ever did, I think. We got a Supreme Court ruling that said that it does not matter if you're gay or lesbian, and I'm sure it would be whatever now, that cannot be taken into consideration during a custody hearing. And we got in after a wonderful woman named Donnie Fox had lost her 2 girls, primarily because she was a lesbian. And so we got in, and Herland funded the appeal, which eventually went, which I think Donnie won the appeal, and then the husband took it up to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and where Donnie Fox definitely won. And we raised a lot of money for that appeal. We did it right. You know, we set up a separate bank account as much as we hated the extra paperwork, and raised a lot of money through newsletter appeals, through direct mailings, and we had a concert where we brought in 2 of the real stalwarts of the women's music scene, Chris Williamson and the woman who was then her partner, Trey. Trey? Any help here, anybody? Come to me in half an hour. Huh?
I said, no worries.
Okay, well, I hope not. I'm hoping not. No, but we brought these 2 wonderful women in, and I didn't know it was nothing interesting, but they had good 12 or 14 pages worth of things they had to have. Like, they had to have a small bottle of whiskey in their room, and they had to have this kind of food in their dressing room, and water, and all these things. And we did it, and we were going to pay them like $4,000 plus expenses. Well, anyway, they came in after they did that. We turned out a ton of people for the concert, which was in the little Tweedy Theater down at the Philharmonic, right down where the Hall of Mirrors is, down at the big, right down in the little tiny theater in the big Philharmonic building downtown. And at the end of the concert, one of them came up to one of us and said, "We really need to speak to you right now," in the dressing room. Oh my God, we did something wrong. What's up? Anyway, so we went in, and what it was they said they didn't want their fee. Makes you cry talking about it. So we didn't have to pay them. All of that extra money went to Fox v. Fox. Yeah. So that was really good. Wonderful experience all around.
That's amazing. Beyond probably money, what would you say Herland's biggest challenge was?
Well, consensus was a big challenge. And cranky people is not that big a challenge, though we always had some. Money, consensus, a little bit, even though we were, we were not on the gay strip, we were like half a block beyond it. And there was a little bit of feeling of not being part of, and I think we wanted to be a part of, but certainly, every year with Pride, they never talk about Pride, never talks about the Herland picnic, which is the evening before the parade, right? And I don't know who's at fault, or if there is fault, but I think they should talk about it. And maybe it's up to Herland to push to get it listed in the Pride activities. Or maybe it's up to Pride to know that, Herland, the mass. So there was a little bit the feeling of being outside. There was a little bit of feeling of being vulnerable. I think when we first got our big pride flag, rainbow flag, and flew it, we got a little adrenaline right here. Yeah, it was, is somebody going to come beat us up, burn us down? But we did it. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that. Most of the challenges were just something fun to tackle. I think it wasn't. Yeah, it was a good time. It was a fun time.
You were speaking about the fear after putting up the pride flag. So can you talk a little bit about how the bars were like a safe space to kind of be before Herland?
Oh, yes.
Well, it's safe
It was
loosely.
Loosely, right.
Yeah.
The bars were right. If you didn't get passed on the ramp. Yes, before Herland, there was no place but bars to go to, and we didn't have the wonderful apothecary then with no smoking and wingback chairs. It's a great bar. So bars were the place to go, and when you go to a bar, you're going to drink. We actually had a whole lot of women at Herland who were 12-stepping alcohol. I mean, I started to say alcoholics, but then we had some who were fully embracing their alcoholism too. And then we had a lot who didn't drink too much at all, ever. But it was an alcohol-free space at the time, and the retreat started off alcohol-free. That didn't last very long. And, your people were in cabins and they're out, and you can't control that stuff. And I think now at Herland, if they have an event, you can bring your own. Oh, I know you can at the side pile or at the side. It's adult. I really can't say that much about bars. I was actually considered by all, including myself, a straight woman when I first started working at Herland. And I did not go out to the bars. I started going out after being at Herland to fundraisers or other things, but I didn't go out just for the fun of it for a long time. But they were very important in the community.
What do you think the legacy of Herland is?
Oh, I remember that question. Well, I think it's right here.
Yeah.
It certainly lives on in a lot of our hearts, and I mean, it's still ongoing. They have a wonderful, I think the supper club has 20 or 30 people at it, which is, so it's quite a different kind of spirit at Herland than there was when we were there. We were a radical bunch, and this is a very nice but not particularly radical bunch. I don't think we can make, I mean, as important as Herland was to me, I don't think we can make its legacy be too huge a thing. But I mean, this is fantastic. What you're doing here, and having this and the oral history, because we were a wonderful bunch of women, and that's the truth. That's the truth. We had some wonderful men friends, too.
Is there anything that you want us to make sure we get documented for the documentary, or anything you want to share so we archive it?
Well, you have the newsletters, right?
Oh yeah,
That was,
I have the newsletter.
I was really involved with the newsletters. Yeah, I was very involved with the newsletters. Loved it. Margaret Atwood, whose name is all in the news nowadays, was subscribed to our newsletter. She did. And you know that book, My Mama's Dead Squirrel? I absolutely can't think of the name of the woman who wrote that. But anyway, she was, she got our newsletter too. Yeah, she got our newsletter. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the Seagrass Lesbian Essays on Southern Culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we have that one.
I think so. And there is a university in the Netherlands which has a lot of our newsletters. many years of our newsletters.
It's exciting because they are all online, and I can send you that link so you can just click on them.
The articles in there, would you own them now? Or
Yeah, well, technically, well, I don't know about copyright, but when all of these donations, they're property of UCO. Now everybody signs the form, and it's property of UCO, so it's not. We'll never discard them. We'll never get rid of them.
Well, I'm asking on a personal note because you know the St. Sybil's. I don't know if you haven't. There's a column called St. Sybil in about 8 or 10 years worth of them, and it's a possibility that they're going to be gathered into a book.
Cool. Oh no, you'll be able to do all that. I mean, that's fine. That's
Okay.
We just wanted to get them online.
Yeah. Well, someone like me could go through and make sure she's got all the St. Sybil's together. Yeah. Wonderful.
They're all up. It's awesome.
Okay.
So part of the grant, there are 3 parts of the grant: the start, the newsletters, and the documentaries. So now we're trying to finish up the final part of it, which would be the documentary.
Right,
That's all we have left to do.
Right. Now, what are you going to do to make the documentary fun and sexy?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to ask this monogamy